Today on Week in Review, a milestone for LNG. And Canada Day is recognized across the country. Hello and thank you for joining us. A tanker is now banned for Asia after loading Canada's first cargoes of liquefied natural gas. The first shipment from the LNG Canada facility in Kitimat has begun its journey aboard the gas-locked Glasgow. Premier David Eby says the shipment will go to international markets around the world and will be a major step in making BC and Canada more economically independent from its main trading partner, the U.S. The Premier says the project will begin in billions of dollars over the next 40 years. Kitimat Mayor Phil Gemoff said it's taken about a decade to see the startup, which he says will bring a long-term economic boost to the region. Youth conservation groups and communities have responded with concern to the BC government's approval of the substantial start application for the Prince Rupert gas transmission pipeline. But others from within have different ideas. Here is CFTK-TV's Helen Matthews with more details.
A release from concerned groups and communities are saying that the province's decision to approve the Prince Rupert gas transmission pipeline's substantial start lacks free, prior, and informed consent from all impacted nations, as well as ignores active court cases on the pipeline. The decision extends the Western LNG and Niskanen-owned pipeline's decade-old environmental assessment certificate, despite opposition and legal action taken by the Gatineau hereditary chiefs, whose land the pipeline would cross. They say that only a small area of Niska land was cleared last summer, which was accepted as substantial construction. This matter is currently under judicial review in the BC Supreme Court, asserting that the legally required effects assessment was not conducted. Kathy Clay, president of the Kispiox Valley Community Centre, called the decision profound environmental and social negligence. The PRGT pipeline would cross 1,360 waterways and 5 major watersheds. It would drill under the Babine, Skeena, Kispiox, and Nass rivers, as well as along the seafloor to Pierce Island. President of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment says it threatens BC's ability to meet climate targets as well as raises health concerns. However, members of the First Nations Climate Initiative indicate otherwise. Eva Clayton, elected president of the Niska Nation and FNCI founding leader, said recently FNCI and its partners have been advancing an interconnected set of projects and are directly mitigating the impacts of climate change. Facilitator of the First Nations Climate Initiative, Alex Grabowski, said the group is committed to offsetting climate impact.
So that you get to sort of net zero in terms of environmental impact. And then after that, you invest in restoration. And so you set up a fund that can fund restoration projects that not only compensate for the impacts that have occurred because you've already offset them, but actually improve environmental quality.
Parks and Environment Minister and North Coast MLA Tamara Davidson said in a statement, "I am confident that the Canadian Environmental Office has thoroughly and thoughtfully considered all the information, including the significant amount of interest from First Nations in the region and members of the public." Davidson said the project will be monitored through its lifetime. For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Helen Matthews.
Canada Day has come and gone, marking the country's 158th year, leaving behind a blend of mixed emotions. While celebrations unfolded across the Northwest, some locals shared thoughtful reflections and differing opinions on what the day means to them. For many in the Northwest, this Canada Day was about remembering the past, coming together in the present, and looking towards a future of greater understanding and unity. Here in Terrace, every year, events at the Heritage Park offers a space for remembrance, particularly in honor of Indigenous children and the legacy of residential schools. But Canada Day wasn't without complexity. Some community members expressed mixed emotions, reflecting on the country's ongoing relationship with Indigenous people and the broader meaning of national celebration.
A nation that's kind of been founded on the cultural assimilation and genocide of a whole group of people. I mean, back home where I'm from, Newfoundland, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Beothuk people, but they were one of the only First Nations groups in Canada that got totally wiped out during colonization. Like, there's not a single Beothuk person left living alive. So, I mean, Canada Day to me just represents the celebration of a country that's founded on some pretty terrible stuff, some pretty bloody history. So I don't observe it. I observe like Indigenous Peoples Day and Indigenous Peoples Month. Yeah.
I no longer feel for it. When I was a kid, I used to feel for it. I used to wave the flags, go celebrating and camping. I used to carry pride with it, but it's dead now. After all that, as I got older, I've learned what Canada did and what the genocide was, and what it did to the Canadian people, the first peoples, and it ruined my whole idea of it. The diversity still stands. That I can stand behind. I can stand behind diversity, not Canada.
To me, it's a celebration of appreciating all cultures and recognizing the importance of the Indigenous people and learning their history and their culture.
I think that the history of Canada is more complicated. I have to look at it. I don't really see Canada being only 158 years old. Canada has been here, people have been here for thousands of years, and it's learning that.
Helen Asante, CFTK-TV News. Various events that commemorated the day were held throughout the Northwest over the weekend. In Terrace, the city's fire department put on their yearly pancake breakfast event at the Terrace Fire Hall with the purpose of raising money for the BC Professional Firefighters Burn Fund, and this year they were able to raise about $8,000 in total. Kitimat's River Lodge Recreation Center was also home to various food, craft and business vendors plus a concert event, while their downtown area had a pancake breakfast of their own, as well as their annual Kinsman Canada Day parade. As for the town of Smithers, their main celebratory event took place at Beauville Square and featured their own live music, free poutine and ice cream, in addition to a late afternoon film and dance party. Up next, a BC family fight for their daughter's health care. Hello again and welcome back to CFTK-TV. The Terrace RCMP have released a public information about the most notable calls they received during the final few days of June and Canada Day. In one case, an officer saw a vehicle depart from a resident that police knew a local drug house, and eventually a traffic stop was initiated on the vehicle. And despite the driver's attempt to leave the scene, the police got him to stay put, confirmed his identity, and after searching his vehicle, they discovered several quantities of suspected cocaine and fentanyl. The man was then arrested for possession of a controlled substance. In a report from the Kitimat RCMP, a patrolling officer was conducting a traffic stop on a man riding motor scooter without a helmet, led to an unsuspected discovery. While telling the man about helmet laws, the officer discovered that the man was carrying illegal cigarettes and other suspected drugs. The man was arrested and later released, but this discovery has opened an investigation looking into potential drug trafficking. Free trade by Canada Day. It was a key cornerstone of Mark Carney's campaign page to voters, and on deadline day, experts agree he lived up to his promise. But that does not mean the work is done. Experts say if Canada wants to realize the economic benefit promised on campaign trail, provinces and the feds will have to work together on much, much more. CTV Colton Preo explains.
158 years ago, a few provinces bet on a big idea, that they'd be stronger together than they ever could be apart.
Working together to build one economy, Mark Carney was graded on his economic cornerstone. In its annual report card, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business gave the federal government a B for its work on internal trade, but would upgrade to an A after it dropped all federal free trade exemptions Monday. Ontario and Nova Scotia are the top performing provinces, while Quebec and Newfoundland are the worst.
That's not all of the work. It's really the policy changes and the regulatory work and the standards changes that has to come about for free trade to actually take place.
One of the biggest moves forward was in Carney's Major Projects Bill, C5, legislating a push for increased mutual recognition, where Ottawa will accept one province's standards as equal across the country. Provinces like Ontario, Manitoba, and New Brunswick have already moved to adopt mutual recognition for some alcohol sales, interprovincial labor, and more.
The dialogue, the exchange of data and know-how actually propels towards even better common platforms.
But others are worried.
They're doing this mutual recognition in a way that is going to risk a race to the bottom. So basically the lowest standards in any province being accepted as good enough.
In trucking, that's a concern. Instead, they're hoping the urgency around internal trade will lead to harmonized regulations for oversized cargo, driving restrictions, and rest stops on major highways.
If we want the inputs to go and the freight and the materials to do these nation building projects, this is another foundational piece. It's not rocket science to get this fixed.
While Ottawa focuses on reducing regulations, some economists say the best way to help Canadian trade is to build roads, rails, and ports as quickly as possible.
The young family that's grappling with cuts funding for their child's unaffordable but life-saving drugs are still fighting to have the decision overturned. Here is CTV's Yvonne Raymond.
A week since Charlie Pollock's last publicly funded infusion to treat a rare disease, her family is spending time together while leaders around them add to their advocacy.
I am just absolutely appalled and heartbroken for the family, and also, as an electorate, I'm absolutely flabbergasted at the government's decision and choice to do this. I want for Charlie's medication to be reinstated immediately, and the government has the ability to do that.
Charlie's Conservative MP is calling on the Premier after the NDP government cut funding to the $800,000 drug. Jeff Kibble wants the child's full medical team included on any decisions related to her care and says he's written to the Federal Ministry of Health urging intervention. BC's Premier says the province has already been in touch.
The Minister of Health wrote to Health Canada. Health Canada did a review. They said that their protocol was up to date and included the latest research. And that is, I think, the appropriate course of action.
Come meet her. Redo your review. See her in person. She is not bedridden. She is not a vegetable. She is not a lost cause. All of this because of Brenera.
The founder of a patient advocacy group worries about the signal a case like this one presents.
It's upsetting for me because I do have a personal connection to it. I have 2 children who also have an ultra-rare disease that receive a biologic like Charlie does, but in a different way. And I feel this decision sets a very dangerous precedent for all children of rare disease, for anyone receiving a life-altering or life-sustaining medication. This says that the government can take away your medication without even consulting your medical team.
The Ministry of Health says clinical information from Charlie's doctor was part of the review. Her family remains adamant their terminally ill child has thrived with Brenera.
She has quality of life. You are going to rip that from her.
And their clock is ticking for another dose. Yvonne Raymond, CTV News.
After the break, BC preps for heat. Thanks for staying with us. Among the multitude of community events that took place during the summer in northern West BC, the city of Terrace tried something a little different not that long ago. Terrace held what was called the Popsicles in the Park event at George Little Park as a way to celebrate the fact that June is Recreation and Parks Month. At the inaugural edition of the event, around 500 popsicles were given out. It's been 4 years since we learned of the death toll from an unprecedented heat wave. The 2021 heat dome prompted changes in how BC handles extreme temperatures, but was it enough? CTV's Penny Daflos reports.
It was a record heat wave meteorologists saw coming, but no one expected it to be so deadly, with British Columbia's medical and emergency response agencies unprepared.
The usual response that we have based on what happened in 2009 clearly was not sufficient.
Poor communication to the public, overwhelmed hospitals, and the collapse of BC Emergency Health Services.
It was apocalyptic that night.
Saw at least 619 people die in the days and weeks that followed. The BC coroner found nearly all had perished indoors. Most were older, poor, and lived alone.
It's indoor temperatures that can be the biggest risk for people.
The health authorities and emergency officials have made big changes to how they communicate the risks of extreme heat and have developed a comprehensive response plan outlining priorities and levels of alert.
Despite all the things that have been done since the 2021 heat dome, we still hear from seniors who are raising concerns about extreme temperatures. There's still confusion around how to get notified about heat warnings, not sure when to leave their homes.
Several studies, including a new one from UBC, are now advocating for what they call the right to cool.
It's not a luxury, and it's interesting to think of this in comparison to smoke alarms. So, when you move in somewhere, you don't expect to pay more because there is a smoke alarm. It is just, basic safety. And I think with the changing climate, we need to think of cooling in that sense too.
4 years after the deadliest weather event in Canadian history, there's no public memorial nor any plans for one. If somebody were to step forward, perhaps a fitting location could be the grounds of the legislature to remind policymakers of their obligations to the most vulnerable. Penny Dafla, CTV News, Vancouver.
A prominent BC curler was diagnosed with a rare condition that's paralyzed hair from the chest down. The Abbotsford native is getting treatment and has a long recovery ahead of her. CTV's Martin McMahon has more.
Brooklyn Alexic is taking on the fight of her life with a smile. The 20-year-old University of Victoria student has been diagnosed with transverse myelitis. The disorder occurs when a section of the spinal cord is inflamed. Last month, while in Saskatchewan ahead of starting a summer job, Alexic woke up paralyzed.
Basically, within 2 hours of waking up that morning, she was completely paralyzed from her neck down.
Alexic grew up in Abbotsford and is the daughter of well-known curler Shannon Jonice, who has competed in the Scotties Tournament of Hearts 5 times.
She has a huge circle of friends. She's a ray of light in everybody's life. She's positive. She's a fighter, and Brooklyn thrives academically. She's going to UVic to be a elementary school teacher.
Alexic has had her own fame as well, appearing in the 2024 documentary Curl Power, which followed her Maple Ridge-based curling team. The film was screened in theaters across Canada, tracking the ups and downs of the team as the girls push to compete in the Canadian Junior Curling Championships.
No crying now. We have so many more games to go.
Alexic's former curling coach has started a GoFundMe, which has raised tens of thousands of dollars in support and hopes to raise more. But beyond money, what Alexic and others with her condition really need is for people to donate plasma.
At the end of this week, she will have had 14 plasma exchanges. And each plasma exchange takes approximately almost 13 donors to provide enough plasma for one exchange. And Brooke will have had 14, and that totals 175 donors. So Brooke, it's really important to her.
The family is hopeful Alexic will travel back to the Lower Mainland by next week, with the goal of one day being able to curl again. Martin McMahon, CTV News, Vancouver.
The province's insurance corporation and its Animal Welfare Society are warning drivers to protect their pets on summer road trips. A joint statement from the ICBC and the provincial SPCA says a crash-tested harness or a firmly anchored hardshell crate can prevent serious injuries of pets and people in the vehicle. They say pets are safest when secured in the backseat or cargo area of a vehicle, not on someone's lap. They say while it's tempting to let your dog hang its head out of the window, this can lead to eye injuries due to weather, heavy wind, or debris. Still to come, 1 month's art is done close to home. Welcome back to CFTK-TV. Down in Vancouver, it was a very special Canada Day for a group of new Canadians Here is CTV's Craig Cross.
A flood of red and white swept through the streets of downtown Vancouver to celebrate Canada Day.
Love it. I love it.
A nation that means something different for many in the crowd.
I love it. There's maple syrup, there's poutine, there's everything.
It's everything from gender equality, racial equality, religious freedom.
For them, Canada is home. And while they soaked up the festivities outside of Canada Place,
Oh, Canada.
It was here, inside one of the ballrooms, where 30 people from around the world were taking their oath of Canadian citizenship.
I'm feeling really, really nice about it. And earlier I was Indian, and now I'm Canadian and Indian both combined.
I don't even have the words. It's just there's so much emotion in me right now.
A long process for some, but worth the wait.
I think that every immigrant can say that it's a very long journey, and everybody comes with their stories and their own struggles, but it's a great day to celebrate.
Canada Day at Canada Place. I don't think it gets any more Canadian than that, so yeah, feels really special.
A group that started the day as strangers now will always be connected as fellow Canadians. Craig Crow, CTV News, Vancouver.
We leave you tonight with a work of art that covers the influences of one man's life. Here is CTV's Sarah Plowman.
These are the first two panels we did.
No words were used for Brian McKinnon's conversation piece, Face Upon Face on the front of his house. By now, people have heard.
Wow. Gerald, good to meet you. Happy Canada Day.
And want to see it themselves.
I like the colors and everything. It just sticks right out nice.
The idea sprouted from the artist's imagination. Celebrate those who had an impact on his life by digitally painting them and putting their faces on panels. Meet these 250.
All of these faces are jazzed up versions of people that I've known throughout my life. I wanted to make a really powerful work that people would respond to the instant they saw it.
The faces are mostly Canadian and mostly positive, but some are angry. Thankfully, that's not how McKinnon's wife felt when he surprised her with the new addition.
It's absolutely wonderful to me. It's colorful. It brings you joy to look at it.
The artist is a partially retired doctor whose passion has always been projects like this. He's decorated his shutters with toys. That clothesline is actually a sculpture. Inside, work hangs in every room, brightening up all angles. He's played with toys, colors, and shapes, but the physician's biggest fascination is faces.
Well, I think they tell you more about the personality of individuals than any other part of the body do. I think the hands and the movement of our hands do something, but there's nothing like a face, and there's nothing nearly as interesting to me as a human.
Good luck finding yours, though, or his. Is your face here?
I can't tell you.
It's more like a game of guess who. Perhaps that's the point, and a way to engage the artist and onlookers' imaginations. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
That wraps up this edition of Week in Review. Join us for CFTK-TV News weeknights at 5, 6, 6:30, and at 11. I'm Helen Asante. For all of us here at CFTK-TV News, thanks for watching and have a great weekend.